What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the Boston DraftKings studio. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for y'all. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out on DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. PJ Carlesimo, the coach, going to join us today. Take a look at a little bit of NBA action that we got going on here. We're also going to relish in some Thursday night football look ahead. We talked to Ryan Fitzpatrick yesterday about that, but plenty to break down with that game. But, Dad, as you get ready to load up your Sprinter van and head back to Arizona, the sinking feeling of dread washing over you is only matched by the sinking feeling of dread around that city as they now officially lose the World Series last night to the Texas Rangers. I'd imagine they feel worse, but it feels like a close second for you right now based on everything I've heard pre-show.
They certainly feel worse, but they're getting close to the weekend. They'll get over it. They'll move on. They'll say,
hey, they're getting close to the weekend. Like, you know what? You lost, but at least it's going to be Friday.
Well,
tomorrow.
No, that's exactly right.
Yes.
You lost. It's right by the weekend. We're going to go to the weekend. It's Arizona, so it's going to be in the 80s or 90s. So kind of like, sports fans in LA. Well, you know what? Our team's didn't do well in this particular situation. We got other stuff to do.
You know what? I didn't realize you were referring to the fans for a second. I thought you were referring to the players. It's like, well, you lost. No, Friday.
No. I was referring to the fans. The fans, the players. This one's going to sting for a bit, and then you get to look back and say, even though they got basically routed in this 3 in a row, losing at home, it's still just like I've said about those that hate losing the Super Bowl, or you guys getting smoked in the college football championship game.
Thanks.
You can't. But seriously, you can't win the title unless you're there. So you know what? They were there. They got beat 3-1. I get it. It's going to go down as a very low-rated World Series. But who doesn't care is those players. Those players don't care.
You're right. They can take solace in the fact that not that many people saw them lose.
Yeah, there's one way to look at it, Jesse.
And once you get to the offseason, basically every day can be Friday if you want it to be.
Well, that's exactly
you've got
right.
a whole host of Fridays coming up.
And that's how it is. It's like in the football playoffs, because there's only one game, in the NFL, college too, but in the NFL through the playoffs to the Super Bowl, it's like you go in with high hopes and then you lose, and all of a sudden the next day you're cleaning out your locker. You were ready to make this run, and now you're cleaning out your locker. And every day in the offseason is like a Friday for you. So it's obviously series in the other sports. But this game ends. They can't come back, as we'll talk about this game, obviously. But it's over now. They're waking up today going, it's over. Season's over. We stopped. So they get into they'll get into their routines pretty quickly. That's just how it works. You're right, Mike. I am scared to death. I am not Mr. Technology. The amount of equipment that I have in this room that was brought here and set up for me still obviously is in this room. I have to transport it all to Arizona and set it up again for the show Monday. I won't be on tomorrow because we'll be driving, me and my wife and the 3 dogs and my son Jake, taking everything to Arizona. And then I have to reconstruct this there. So Monday will be the big test at 8 o'clock Eastern when we're live. What will this look like? Will it be like this, or will I be on my computer because I couldn't hook anything up? Because I've labeled wires that I have to unhook already. And as soon as the show ends, I have to dismantle everything and get in the car and go. So I've taken pictures, I've taken movies, but I fear, Mike, you know me, none of that's going to help. When I look at said picture or movies that I'm taking, I'm going to go, what the hell is that a picture of? What is that a movie of? And I'm going to be sitting there with a bunch of wires not plugged into the right ports.
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of technical trades, they always say your best way to learn about something is, taking it apart and then putting it back together. A lot of people will do that with computers. People that love old automobiles will take apart a car and kind of help reconstruct it as they're going through all of that. That is not going to be something that is your strong suit. The only advantage you have is my younger brother, Jake, potentially being around for that because he's the only one of us that got that gene. You're the son of a bricklayer. Your late father was able to build out the entire addition on your guys' house when you were growing up as kids, and you received exactly zero of that. You got much more practical skill than most, and you were in charge of making sure all the usual stuff, like we knew how to change a tire and jump a car and do a lot of the basic stuff, but anything beyond that really is just completely out of your reach, but right in Jake's wheelhouse. So I'd say he's your best bet at tech support, and if not, we are going to drastically improve this show by having it be just me and Jesse on Monday.
We're just going to be chatting, just hanging out.
Well, just Jesse, be ready because I'm just not sure how it's going to go. Cool. And Mike, you're right. I wish my dad was a bricklayer and I'd work side jobs with him and I'd watch him, lay the brick and build steps, build chimneys, driveways, everything. And just the way he did it when he had to crack a brick in half, he did it perfectly every time. And I was like, man, I wish I could do that. But it carried on to everything else. He could do electrical, carpentry, everything. And I was so bummed I didn't get it. And nobody else in my brothers, Greg or Bob, really got it. It seems to only be Jake. Out of you, Jake, and Sydney, Jake is the one that could just walk into a room and basically try and build something and not have it, fall apart or blow up a house. I wish I could do that. I'm sure, Mike, you wish you had some of that as well.
I'm sure the Arizona Diamondbacks also wish they had won more than one game. So everyone's got things that they wish they wanted in here. CJ Nitkowski, the analyst for the Texas Rangers, going to join us later in the show to recap a lot of this. But, Dad, part of this is, some things change, some things stay the same. Corey Seager, no matter what team he's on, is destined to be the World Series MVP and go out there and make things happen. He is named the MVP yet again, as he was during the title run for the Los Angeles Dodgers just a few years ago before he came over here for $500 million.
So, it's exactly right. He and Simeon and a pitcher, I think it was Gray, I'm not sure the pitcher, the three of them came over for $500,000. There's so many notes and stats in this game, and since you mentioned Seager off the top, he was the MVP in the 5 games. He had 3 home runs, 6 RBI. He is now the 4th player to win multiple MVPs. And these names, Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, and Reggie Jackson are the other 3. And by the way, Reggie Jackson and Corey Seager are the only 2 that have won, one with one team and one with another. Reggie Jackson did it with the Yankees and the A's, and now you have Seager with the Dodgers and the Rangers.
It is one of the more impressive stats because I think it reminds you how infrequent success is in baseball for all the obvious reasons.
I was surprised at this stat. Yeah.
I was blown away when that number was only 4 because I think in so many other sports, and this is probably the sports like basketball specifically that comes to mind, where we in the modern era especially associate so much of your worth as a player with finals MVPs. It's not even the regular season MVP anymore. Yep. We so prorate the postseason, and we've been so used to the greatest players our sport has to offer at minimum having 1 or 2 of these things on their mantle. And so to know in baseball there's only 4 guys that have ever been the multiple time World Series MVP is just a reminder of how infrequent that's all been and what a real outlier things like the Astros run, even in the ALCS, has been over 7 straight over the last 7 years is a remarkable feat because in this sport, you're not supposed to be able to get this close this often because of all that randomness.
Yeah, I agree. This stat probably stunned me the most. I kept looking for more. I'm like, wait, is it even narrower, or is it just was overall? I was amazed at this in a sport that has tons of stats and there's tons to go over for this. But listen, this was a good game. I mean, no score going into the 7th on this game. So you had a bit of a pitcher's duel working. Zach Gallen was awesome, throwing a no-hitter through 6 for Arizona. But Eovaldi threw well, even though he didn't give up any runs. He walked, I think, 5, did Nathan Eovaldi. He was 5-0 in this postseason, incredibly well, and did incredibly well. But yeah, from the 7th on and then the 9th, it just blew up for Arizona in a bad way, blew up in a good way for Texas, and that was it. They were popping champagne.
Yep. So congratulations to the Texas Rangers. Like I said, we'll visit with their crew in a little bit and talk even more about that. But to do this in the last 2 games after getting the news that not only were you down Scherzer, but Adolis Garcia, who had been your best player in a lot of ways, or at the very least one of your most spark plug players during the postseason, and then to respond this way, really, really impressive. We will get to more of that as we go along in the show. But guys, it is Thursday, which means we are getting close to having a breakdown and game plan this weekend. We got a lot of football working during the season. And so we want to get to 3 for Thursday, a couple of food for thought munchies that we've got for the upcoming NFL Week 9 slate. And it is a doozy. Like when we got off last weekend in the NFL, everyone I saw was already immediately looking over at all the tantalizing goodies that we've got coming up this weekend. Certainly some of the best matchups in the sport when you look against it, Miami and Kansas City.
Right.
You've got the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals playing Sunday Night Football in prime time. You've got the Chargers at the Jets on Monday Night Football. JK, that's going to be
I was going to say, you got Seahawks and Ravens, which I think will be a good one as well. Way to throw that other game in there. You kidding me?
Going to be a lot of good stuff. But let's get to a couple that we want to look at here, Dad. Starting this weekend, I think all eyes are understandably in a different way going to be on the Las Vegas Raiders, who just fired Josh McDaniels yesterday. We all woke up in the wee hours of the morning or out here the late hours of the night and saw that news. Dad, yes or no, the Raiders will beat the Giants this week and then lose the rest of their games, as they have affectionately dubbed in our group the Jeff Saturday?
Yeah, because remember, Jeff Saturday came in for the Colts and won his first game. I believe it was against the Raiders,
right? The Raiders, yeah. We should have known, by the way, things were going badly then. And listen, a lot of us were rooting for Jeff. We know Jeff. We love Jeff at that point. It had been such an odd story in the world of sports. And so for them to go out there and get that win then was simultaneously great. But then as the season went along, we kind of saw what that turned into. We should have, in hindsight, had a lot more worry. Because didn't the Raiders also lose the game against the Rams when Baker Mayfield showed up on short notice that week?
Baker came in on Thursday and played on that Sunday and led like a game-winning drive. It was amazing. But to your point, like you said, Saturday wins that first game and then lost his last 7. So what's going to happen here? As we mentioned, Josh McDaniels fired. They fired the OC as well, Mick Lombardi, who wasn't even calling plays. Remember, Josh McDaniels was the one calling plays. So quarterback coach Bob Hardy.
I'm looking up kind of pissed. Like, I didn't do this.
Well, what the hell did I do? Give me a chance to call some plays here. And you're brushing me out the door.
Over here ready to cook, and y'all been letting Josh do this.
Exactly. So Bob Hardigree, the quarterback coach, he was promoted offensive coordinator. He's gonna call the plays. And why I say no, Mike, I don't think they win this game. They're going to start the rookie, right? Aiden O'Connell. So he's going to get the time. And while we talked about Giants and Jets last week on just what a direct game it was, plucked out of that is the Giants and Jets both have really good defenses. The Jets we knew about, the Giants defense is playing pretty well. And this offense is absolutely anemic for the Raiders. And now it's being led by a rookie. Now, we may get that incredible game. Now, Aiden has played a little bit before, but we all have Will Levis on the mind coming in and throwing 4 touchdowns in the first game he got in, as he's going to start tonight for the Titans against the Steelers. But you do have a rookie quarterback. You got talent out there, obviously Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and Jacoby Myers, and you do have talent out there. Hunter Renfrow, if they ever feel like throwing to him again. But they haven't already. So I don't see a lot changing, and I think the Giants defense has been playing pretty well. Let's see who's going to lead them at quarterback. So I'm going to go no on this one, and I don't think it's going to be this magical first game with a new coaching staff.
Let's see if Antonio Pierce can get the boys fired up. Here he was at his introductory presser this weekend talking about this game. Maybe.
But it's a new day. It's a new chapter. It's a new era. It's a new mindset. What is that mindset? It's that of the Raider pride, the commitment to excellence, and making sure our alumni, our fan base, and Raider Nation are proud of what they see on the field. What does that look like? Tough, passionate, effort, energy, that enthusiasm that you see when we all watched our kids and these young men who are now pro athletes play when they're in Pop Warner. having that love for the game. We're on the same page. Champ and myself, our staff is connected. We had a great team meeting this morning. Everybody was steely-eyed and focused. We walked in with a smile on our face. The synergy, the energy in this building, and the personality of our players will reflect on who we are as Raiders.
So this is not Antonio Pierce's fault, but I think what we've seen recently as a trend in the NFL is an inverse correlation between introductory press conference performance and overall team performance.
Yeah.
When you look at the Jonathan Gannons of the world, the Nick Siriannis of the world, on and on down the list, guys that have come out and not looked great in their introductory press conference, as of late have reversed the Adam Gase trend where they seem to perform well on the field. So I'm a little worried because Antonio Pierce was too buttoned up and had that speech too dialed in for the first time around.
So it's always like, what's the attitude of the players in a coaching change? You know, is there kind of a re-energized, are they re-energized a bit? And I'll say this, how they can get re-energized. If Antonio Pierce just cuts down the meeting time, because from all you heard was how long and droning on the Josh McDaniels meetings were, and just how bored the players got with it. And you can sit there and say, hey, this is your job, just deal with it and go play. But it got pretty mundane from what we've heard in that locker room and those meeting rooms. So just cutting meeting time down may fire up the players a little bit.
Yeah, when you try and do the Patriot way without any of the Patriot results, which is what we've seen is a common mistake made by Belichick disciples, you end up getting a team that just kind of doesn't want to hang out with you. So, yes, Antonio Pierce has a chance to zag. Worth noting, by the way, I saw a lot of Jim Harbaugh edits in Raiders apparel yesterday that Antonio Pierce is also a former college coach who left amidst scandal at Arizona State last time we saw him coaching. So some precedent if you're a Raiders fan who's hoping that Jim Harbaugh looks longingly at what you guys got going on here. But I'd agree, Dad. I don't think they win this one. It sounds like Daniel Jones is getting ready to be back, but this is definitely must-win territory for the Giants on the other side, whose season's also in a bit of a tailspin here. Jesse, let's get to our next one up here. And Mike McDaniel, who continues to be... this is also, Josh McDaniels, while we don't like anyone getting fired, it does make the McDaniel thing a lot easier now going forward.
Sure does. And Mike McDaniel went and brought his comedy stylings to Germany, the man we know and love. Check out the way he opened his presser. And guys, it was with a hype joke.
So, I know what you guys are thinking. I'm bigger in person. You're right. This is a bigger room. I can get used to this. Who's going first?
So it didn't really not much of a reaction in the room?
None.
Maybe he got lost in translation? I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten so used to everything he says seeming funny to everyone. He's
people laugh
press
at it.
Conference stuff to people. So when it falls flat in that room, that to me, I'm always the most impressed by stand-up comedians and their response to bombing. Coach wasn't quite as prepared for that, Dad.
Yeah, he was like, God, well, it's a big room.
That was, just dead silence in that room. Listen, in their two losses, Tua has thrown 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They put up their 2 lowest scoring totals because that's the only teams they've beaten are teams with under 500 record. They play the better teams. They lose to Buffalo 48-20 and Philly 31-17. Those are the lowest totals they put up all year offensively. And now you're going against a Chief team that just got beat by Denver. I see the Chiefs winning this one in Germany. I know Miami has the explosive power, but we have seen them kept down a little bit by better teams. And I just think KC coming off that loss is going to be really, really trying to show something.
So the change of scenery does not help them. Going overseas does nothing.
No, I don't think so. Good beer, but
Yeah, it is the interesting question now that I think people are going to start to say about the Dolphins. There's this idea that there's a total dichotomy between who they are against bad teams and good teams. But I do wonder, Dad, how we would perceive this Dolphins season overall if the final score against Denver was just like 31-17. if it was like a much more normal NFL beatdown rather than them putting up 70 points, how we would talk about this Dolphins team overall from one of the best offenses that we've ever seen to just a very good offense, and also would be more acknowledging of the injuries that have been hindering them up front right now. I think I saw Teron Armstead was back at practice finally, their left tackle that had been out for the last few games, I believe since the Chargers game. I wonder if it would make us more acknowledging of some of their obvious flaws that popped up during this run. We will get to more NFL coming back after this.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Who in the world of NBA is not familiar with the Woj bomb, okay? We all know and love them. Woj is the ultimate NBA insider, as evidenced by the fact that he was the one to break the James Harden trade news at the lovely hour of 2:08 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday morning. And he did it by hanging out in Newark Airport all night, you guys. So this man is at the airport, ready to board a flight to LA. And it was suggested to him that maybe he shouldn't get on a plane where he might not have Wi-Fi because, like, you know, someone's like, there could be some important news. So basically, he just stayed in the airport. And he said he got kicked out of the lounge he was in. He watched the airport shut down. He watched it start to basically almost open back up. And this sounds, you know, he got to break the news, but this just sounds awful.
Yeah, spending the night in the airport is something you try and avoid at all costs. We've all had to do it at some point. If you play the game long enough, eventually you take that kind of L. But, Dad, between this story here, which is, I think, a little more mundane on that scale. We've heard the perils of these guys traveling before, but you couple this with the Shams piece that got put out the other week, talking about how much screen time he logs and how much he logs on vacation and about how these guys are basically never connected. I don't know if there's enough money in the world for if you gave me the hypothetical where I got that salary, but I had to become an NBA or NFL insider. It seems like a truly miserable existence.
But I mean, there's no doubt he's the top of the mountaintop for any insider in any sport, right? I mean, he is it, because other insiders at times have gotten ripped by players. Woj doesn't. Players go to Woj. I mean, the dude is unbelievable in his information of who he has, of who he talks to, and who talks to him. It's incredible. So, but I'm with you. I mean, you are always on without a doubt. And being in an airport all night, you're right. We've all been down that road, but I mean, that's part of it. You always have to be on the ready for when this stuff happens. But, you know, it's also nice to be, you know, the pinnacle, you know, in your profession at what you do, and that's where he is.
I guess, but sometimes I think about this a lot in sports. I actually talked with this with Dan Levitard and a couple of the guys over there when they were out in Los Angeles for their show about how, and Dad, you've been around some all-time great players or coaches, like what it takes for you mentally to be in a place where you can end up becoming one of the best at what you do.
Yeah.
And in this case, the kind of obsession to do that, it often leads to, once you're done with sports, a lifestyle that isn't always the healthiest, because you're chasing that high and you're used to having this myopic worldview that has you only going after and knowing how to try and achieve this one thing. And when it's done and you're gone, you're left really wanting for something you can't see. We see it with how miserable Michael Jordan is half the time, despite the fact that he's a billionaire. So I do think that there's always something to that where I'm like, you know, I'm kind of comfortable being like pretty good at what I do, but having to do it and be that, I've seen what you've got to be that. Yeah. I don't know if I want that.
Yeah, what you have to give up. How many times, you know, listen, Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest of all time, but I mean, this man was always training, always practicing, and I always loved if I was practicing with somebody else and they weren't practicing hard, they were not getting the ball, and, you know, all the stuff that makes you one of the greatest of all time. I'm with you. That's why there's few of them. That's also why we hang on to Nikola Jokic, right? And say, okay, you be our guy. You go down as one of the greatest of all time, but let your sport be third on your list, you know, of what. And now he may be playing us a bit on that as well, but we're going to let him. We're going to let him do it. We're going to let him do it and just know he likes to hang out in Serbia with his horses, with his family. And, oh, yeah, I got to get in the gym and on the court every now and then to get ready for an NBA season.
Yeah, we stand our work-life balance king here, the millennial/Gen Z god that is Nikola Jokic. You did mention one of the other GOATs, Dad. We've talked about it a couple of times on this show. We had the Clippers in action last night against the Lakers. Right. Lakers had a bit of a losing skid against the Clippers overall. We know James Harden, and that trade finally went through. He was in street clothes last night, obviously nowhere near ready to see the court yet with that deal just going through. But everyone else out there and available, and the Lakers were down big early in this game and end up storming back and winning in overtime. And, Dad, Darvin Ham has to feel like a parent who is losing a battle against their teenager right now, because LeBron James versus this minutes restriction so far has been just an overwhelming ass whooping. LeBron goes well beyond that, like 28, 29 minute range they wanted to have him, and he's averaging about 35 minutes a game so far.
Here are the games for him, and it's supposed to be a 28 to 30 minute range. First game he won 29 minutes. Then 35, 39, 33, and last night 42. So, yeah, not sticking to that too much just yet. And, you know, listen, he put up 36, 12, and 7. So it's not like he's not getting the job done. But we all know why they're supposedly talking about doing that is wear and tear on an 82-game season. And then certainly what they're hoping for is a postseason run as well. So, yeah, that will be interesting what his average is for the year as far as minutes played. And then there's the Clippers trying to build that championship player with a bunch of 30-somethings. And Harden, you know, set to jump in with that group soon. Kawhi goes for 38, Paul George 35. They obviously have a lot of talent on that team. But for them, like other teams out there, it's championship or bust, right? Especially when you make a move like this, give up assets you give up, and have guys who are pushing 35 years old as leading your teams. Outside, again, I think Kawhi is 32 or 33. The youngest of those four out there, of Westbrook and Harden and Paul George, is you ain't got a lot of time to make hay with this.
No, I mean, that has the feel, albeit I think with better players still, obviously. of the Lakers team a couple of years ago where everybody, it was LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, and then they brought Carmelo Anthony over there, and you just had this geriatric millennial team that was going out firing up shots. I think with this Clippers team, they should fare a little bit better than that. But with the Lakers, part of this was, hey, you had to force this because you're still down a bunch of guys, Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura, a bunch of names that weren't in the lineup for the Lakers, has LeBron having to go out there and put on the cape, but he did. I mean, in the waning moments of this game where you've got, guys being able to just toss LeBron James ignorant lobs still as he gets toward 40 years old is pretty insane, pretty remarkable, but definitely worrisome to anybody who believes that game limit is something LeBron should be abiding by here. So we'll have plenty more time to get to that. But, Dad, while we're talking basketball, the world of hoops, college and pro, and mainly college, lost an icon yesterday in the Hall of Famer Bob Knight, who passed away at the age of 83, Dad. One of the, I would say, most preeminent figures in the world of coaching, period, and someone who everybody of a certain age knew and aware of, and obviously much more in your era as well.
Yeah, this was definitely my era. Still the last undefeated college basketball team is Hoosiers in Indiana in 1976. He was a guy, you talk about, old time coaches, right? Old school coaches. Well, he was about as old school as could be in an era where, that tough coaching was accepted. And even in that era of tough coaching accepted, he was beloved and he was hated for the way he tough coached. Became physical with some players. Obviously, the incident with throwing of the chair and just some of his words out there. There were those that loved that style. And, oh, by the way, he won. I mean, remember, this was a guy, he was the youngest ever still, Division I basketball head coach. His first head coaching job was Army. He was 24 years old when he was a head coach at Army. So, and then has obviously the long run at Indiana, then finishes up at Texas Tech. When he was done coaching, he had 902 wins. That was the top at that point. Obviously, there's a handful or so ahead of him now, but that was the tops at that time. But just, a polarizing figure. As I said, both good and bad as well. Was the head coach of the 84 Olympic team as well, with that won a gold medal. So his career was really incredible, like I said, on the positive side, and then on certainly the negative side. The cool thing was he kind of got back together with Indiana again, I think in 20 or 21, where, he went back to the court and in front of the crowd and talked with everybody and kind of was the forgiveness phase. So that was good to see. But boy, what a life, what a tenure, what a head coaching world he was in.
Yeah, he proves the difficult task that comes with sometimes eulogizing people we've lost who are complicated figures, and he certainly was that. I don't know if there's few people with something more well-known as Bob Knight is with that chair, but rest in peace to the late Bob Knight.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. ESPN NBA analyst, former coach PJ Carlesimo is a man of many talents. Okay, 239 career NBA wins as a head coach, 3-time NBA champion as an assistant coach with San Antonio, and he was an assistant coach for the 1992 U.S. men's basketball team, the Dream Team, baby. PJ joined GoJo yesterday for a wide-ranging NBA convo. They got into all kinds of good stuff, so let's go ahead and take a look at that right now.
All right, excited to welcome into the show someone considered an old friend, got to work with a bunch, and one of the best NBA analysts in the business right now, PJ Carlesimo, kind enough to join us now as we're getting started with the season. PJ, how you doing?
Excellent, Michael. It's good to be with you. Glad the older man's not there, so I can hang in. I wanted to have someone a little closer in age, but I miss seeing him.
I know he misses you too. He definitely passed that along. Dad's in transit right now, but this is good. We can cut out the middleman and just have some us time here and talk a little bit of ball, which is it's got to be exciting right now. You know, we just had the sports equinox earlier this week, so we've got all 4 majors going on at the same time right now in North America. But with the start of the NBA season, there has been no shortage of action between the moves on the court and off the court. I want to start with that. We finally had the James Harden trade this week that everybody's been waiting on here, making his way out to the Los Angeles Clippers. Yet another move for him. How do you see this playing out now with him joining up with that trio in Los Angeles?
Well, I hate to say, I mean, the first thing you always have to say about the Clippers, unfortunately, is it comes down to health. That's a scary roster. If they're healthy, if PG and Kawhi can play enough games, people can say whatever they want about James and the disruptions and what's gone on. When he's been on the floor, he's played very, very well, particularly in the regular season. Ty Lue, I'm a big Ty Lue fan. I think he's very good. I don't think it's going to be easy to figure out how they want to play and to, integrate them into it. I think they've got the one more game, obviously, that I don't even think they'll be eligible for. I don't know if the trade's been consummated yet. But then they catch a nice break. They have 4 days off to get a couple practices in before that East Coast trip. I'm anxious to see them play. I don't know what kind of shape James is in. I assume PJ Tucker's in good shape. But to me, James is never that far from good shape. So I'm anxious to see them play. It didn't turn out to be the blockbuster, big names going east and west, but there were a lot of good players moved. There's a lot of duplication in it. I would think Nick Nurse is just happy to know who his roster is, at least for now, and start figuring it out. Sixers have actually played well without James to this point, which it's been really impressive. They basically could be undefeated. They've played that well. So trades to me are always, let's wait and see. If it's a couple of huge guys that, usually you say, well, this is going to work out. There's a lot of question marks, more so in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles being in the West makes it even tougher. But if that group is healthy, I'm still not sure what Phoenix has. You talked about, your family's going to be in Arizona for the next 6 months with the good weather. I'm not sure what they have.
I don't know if you've gotten to see him in person yet. What have you made of Victor Wembanyama and the early returns for him in San Antonio as he works through some of that with minimal on-court time with the team before it?
Haven't seen him play in person yet. Kesty and I got to do, I think it might have been the second interview. I think Malika might have talked to him first when he came off the stage at the draft. And, of course, Kesty and I were there. Kesty was in studio. I'm sorry, Alan and I were there. It was impressive. I couldn't believe just how together he was. Tom James, the longtime Spurs PR guy, had told me, he said, you're going to be really impressed when you talk. Just how he handles the whole deal. He's amazing. I watched the interview, throw a plug to other network. Obviously, they're our partners. To watch them on TNT postgame. He's sitting there doing the interview, and he comes up with good answers to the questions. Pop, every single person I've spoken to in San Antonio is super impressed with his attitude, with the fact that he wants to be a good player. He knows he's got a lot of room for improvement. He knows he doesn't know very much about the NBA, and he's just drinking in whatever they're giving him. He wants to be coached. He doesn't mind if they jump on him when he makes a mistake. And Pop's kind of got a inaccurate appraisal, because every once in a while when he used to call it going Serbian. When he goes Serbian on the sideline, people see that and say, boy, he's on his guys all the time. He's really not. He doesn't coach that way day in and day out. He knows who you can push, who you can't. He'll lose it every once in a while, but that's not his normal style. But Victor's drinking it in. He's been great. Not only the Spurs people, but the other coaches I've talked to, the other front office people, Mike, the answer is exactly the same from everybody else. Like you say, well, how good is he? Is he good? They're going better than we thought. Even we heard so much about him. He's even better than we thought he was going to be. His skill set is ridiculous. I think they're still trying to figure out how to use him, frankly. I mean, when you have a guy who is such a force at the rim, like, it just changes the game. I'm watching the Phoenix game last night. I'm not sure when this is going to air. I apologize. But KD, when Victor's on the bench, is driving in, he's dunking the ball. All of a sudden, Victor's back in the game. Kevin got one in there over him, kind of threw a block. But, I mean, it's night and day when he's on the floor and when he's not on the floor. So, like, do you keep him near the rim? He's so good offensively shooting the ball. A lot of bigs in the league are going to be too slow, and you want to get them away from the rim also. So how much do you play him outside? How much do you let him shoot threes? How much do you let him put the ball on the floor? He makes at least one or two moves every game, or he makes two or three dribbles and goes in. He also gets stripped every once in a while. So, I mean, it's almost like you're putting somebody together, and like, what pieces do I put on it? He's got all the pieces. It's just a question of him learning the league and Pop and the staff figuring out, how do we want to use this guy? And I think Pop would be the first to tell you, they still learn something almost every game. He still does something every game. You can see them kind of looking at each other on the bench saying, did you see that?
I think that's part of the fun. Is it does feel like every day we're opening up a new Christmas present with him, and we're going to watch him continue to unlock these skill sets and these new abilities. One of the things that's going to be new for everybody, you talked about the midway point of the season and how much teams are going to learn in that time. There's also going to be the newness of, at that point, they're going to be then thrown this midseason tournament that Adam Silver's been very excited about integrating into the league this year. How do you think teams are going to approach this new idea and new concept the first time out?
Well, I tell you, I'm really impressed with the reaction from the players. I should do a full disclosure. When Adam had the idea for the play-in tournament, I was kind of shaking my head going, man, I don't know, if this is going to work. But A, Adam's the commissioner. B, I like working at ESPN. I want to keep my job. So I wasn't going to say this is a dumb idea. And it turned out it wasn't just a pretty good idea. It was a great idea. And it's almost gotten better every year. Last year you saw what Miami and the Lakers did. You got two teams coming out of the play-in, and one goes to the conference finals. The other goes to the NBA finals. So that was great. My initial reaction was, who's going to care about this? We're playing, these games are being played anyhow. It's November, December, which is kind of, I think, Adam's point. It's kind of that you talked about what a great time it was the last couple of weeks, because all the different professional leagues are going at the same time. And college basketball is even ready to start cooking right now. So, but the players, every player saying the right things. I mean, I know some guys are going to say the right things anyhow, but usually, there's a couple guys that have no problem saying, this is a dumb idea. Why are we doing this? No one's saying that. They seem to be embracing it. It's interesting. I'll be amazed if even the most rabid fans know what the 5 groups are, like 6 groups, who the 5 teams are in their group. But I know Kesty and I are going down to ESPN Radio. November 21, we're going to be at Cleveland at the Sixers, a first-round game, if you will, one of the initial 4. And then we're not doing the quarterfinals, but we're doing both semis in Las Vegas, December 7, and we're doing the championship game December 9 in Las Vegas. And I'm really looking forward to that. People are cynical. There are a lot of people saying 500,000 isn't that much money to, the guys making, multi-millions. May not be, but I'll tell you what, to the assistant coaches and to a lot of the other players on the team, 500 is going to get your attention.
I know you guys are going to be great on that, fired up. You get to make the trip to Vegas, and certainly looking forward to that. And everything else you described, it's a lot of fun stuff set up over the course of this NBA season that we're all looking forward to. PJ, cannot thank you enough for the time. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do this as we get closer to you guys getting out there for this play-in tournament.
Mike, I hope so. Best to Dad, and it's great being with you.
Awesome. Thank you again. Appreciate it. So I feel irresponsible as a journalist for what's gone on already today on this show, because while we've talked some about the Texas Rangers win in the World Series over the Arizona Diamondbacks, and we will talk more coming up later in the show when we have a great guest join us, I neglected to mention the fact that part of this World Series run has been attributed to the growing force inside of sports led by Creed and this locker room galvanizing song that we've seen sweep this great nation. And Dad, it's a great harbinger of things to come, because apparently yesterday you were out at Notre Dame's football practice and you heard a very familiar sound.
Yeah, out there, and now everybody plays music all the time. By the way, every stadium in the college and NFL has DJs now, spinning the tunes, as they say. But yes, I was out of practice. I was out of practice, and all of a sudden, Creed started playing. I had to tape it and send it to the family to say, Creed is everywhere right now, man. They are it. They are it. If you are a sports team, they are the way to go. They are the music to play.
I've been amazed. It's a copycat league when it comes to this. We've seen the Rangers. Yeah. We heard, I think I heard yesterday that the Vikings, I don't know if this was before one of the team press conferences or meetings, were playing Creed in honor of Kirk Cousins, since obviously he's lost for the season, but Kirk had been one of the guys leading the renaissance for Creed in that locker room. What I desperately need now, because I feel like living through a Creed renaissance and seeing them get their just due as one of the most influential rock bands of the late 90s and the early 2000s. I now need one team to have the courage to make a deep postseason run led by the tunes of Nickelback, so we can really exercise some demons, because they have been often villainized wrongly during my lifetime just for pumping out bangers.
I agree. I'm a big Nickelback fan as well. But back to the Creed and what's going on with them, that's the thing, to use your word, Mike, they have a few bangers out there, and it's not like they don't sound good in stadiums either. They do. It sounds good. It's a great song for stadiums, for players, for fans. So it actually fits really well.
And like Nickelback's their perfect Wario, because Creed is technically a Christian rock band, and that's something that didn't register with me in real time.
No, they've insisted that they're not a Christian rock band.
Okay,
they just don't want to be. They don't want to be labeled.
If Kirk Cousins stands by them, we can assume they're a Christian rock band.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's the exact point where I stop believing your assertions that you're not a Christian rock band, when Kirk Cousins has you in the Walkman getting over into practice in the Kohl's Cash outfit. That to me is when you lose that argument. Nickelback a little bit edgier. All I'm saying is, somebody out there have the courage to loudly, proudly blast this in your locker room within range of reporters, so we can get this started in the media cycle. I need this right now. Jesse, one man stepped in front of a microphone this weekend, is going to try and step in front of this Creed-fueled force in South Bend, and that man is Dabo Swinney. Did he give us any more gold this weekend?
Yeah.
This week?
So we played you his passionate comments on Tuesday as he took that call from Tyler from Spartanburg. He came back at him and just, had a little something to say about his salary, his 4-4 record, blah, blah, blah. But at his weekly press conference ahead of Clemson's matchup with Notre Dame, Swinney took the opportunity to just expand on some of those comments, guys.
I don't care if it's a pro athlete. I still don't think it's acceptable to destroy people. People make a living by just attacking people. It's sad. And I don't think that's okay. I don't care if it's I don't even know. Trevor Lawrence playing for the Jaguars right now. I don't care. I don't care what he's paid, man. I don't think you're still human beings, and I still think there's a way to have fair criticism without, just completely demeaning someone's humanity, which is now the clickbait society that we live in, and it's acceptable. I think that's sad. The adults have left the building in this country.
Guys, I gotta say, I think he makes a really good point. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think he makes a really good point, because in this age of the internet, and now we're so emboldened that we do it in person, it's pretty savage if you sit back and think about it, that Tyler from Spartanburg is just ranting about, your salary and what you deserve and blah, blah. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
He makes a great point, but it's like a Magic Johnson tweet. Yeah, we all know it. Everything he said, we all think and we all say.
But apparently we need a reminder.
Yeah, well, but it's not reality. We can say it all we want on how you should treat people. How many times do we have to say, my God, you're sending death threats to a kicker in college or whatever? It's idiocy. Those people are idiots who do it, but they're going to do it. Of course, what Dabo said makes 100% perfect sense. But unfortunately, in this era of Twitter and easy to hide behind, tapping a few keys, we don't. And I don't know how it's going back when people can hide behind their posts.
Dabo for sure likes Creed, right?
Yes. He wants to
if
take
it's a
you
religious
higher.
band, yes.
We've
right.
got to have somebody in the Clemson beat has to ask Dabo if he likes Creed, because that, along with Kirk Cousins, would cement them as a Christian rock band if that happens. So somebody get on that for me. He definitely seems like that kind of guy. And he's definitely right. My thing is with settled in, because Dabo made some compelling points. I said I liked that a little bit more than I expected when he went off on that caller. All these things are true. How's Notre Dame only a 3-point favorite in this game?
I know. Tell me, Mike, you're not out. Again, I was at practice yesterday. When I go to practice, I don't like to talk a lot of ball. I just like to shoot the breeze outside of ball a little bit. So it's not like I got into this game when I was talking to people there, though. Not players or coaches, but talking to the ancillary people, part of the program. Boy, everybody's stoked for a noon game. I'll tell you that much.
And there's nothing quite like a good nooner.
At an away game, noon game, when you're back in early evening, I mean, that is awesome. Like I said, none of the players or the coaches, we didn't discuss that, because that's not something you look at.
Let me tell you, I think it is.
Well, no,
we played one nooner during my time in Notre Dame.
It was at Pitt,
we were
right?
all jazzed. It was at Pitt.
Yeah,
I don't even remember if we won or lost the game. Quite honestly,
you guys won the game. I was there. I was there on the sidelines. You guys won the game. But you're right. Players think of it. But
yeah, because you're getting back at 4:00 in the afternoon, or like in that range, because you're a charter flight home. And in that case, we were close. You get back, you get to get a little nap in, get a dinner in, and then go start drinking. It's the perfect setup.
I guess the way I should have said it is I didn't bring that up with the players, because that's not something to bring up with the players.
Because you're a 60-year-old man, so asking you guys getting ready to come back out here and tear this thing down.
You guys got a noon game, man. You get to be home. But I mean, it's absolutely the players think about it. But back to the point of Notre Dame's a better team than Clemson. Notre Dame is a better team than Clemson, but that doesn't mean this game can't scare you. What I have holding in my back pocket, since I won't be on tomorrow for this game, is Notre Dame's defense is playing lights out right now. Al Golden has them going right now. And the offense, we've seen what they can do, and we're hoping, they get back to that. You saw some of that, obviously, a bit in the last game, especially with Audric Estime and the way he runs the ball. We know Hartman is an extremely good quarterback who throws such a nice ball. So I still feel good about this game, but it is at Clemson. It is Dabo. Even though they have 4 losses, there's just something about that.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's been used to playing night games, so the noon game schedule is a departure from their norm on this season. They announced earlier this week that they had lost tight end Mitchell Evans for the season to an ACL injury coming off that last game, which is devastating. I mean, one of the biggest surprises on this Notre Dame team, Mitchell Evans, who had a great bowl game for them in the Gator Bowl against South Carolina, but was not viewed, at least outside of the program, as the guy that was supposed to step up and take that mantle from Michael Mayer as the next great Notre Dame tight end. So him being out is going to be a massive adjustment point for an offense that's gotten somewhat healthier at that position. Defensively, they get Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart, their corners, who missed lots of last game back. Ben Morris, a scratch after a quad injury in warmups last week. And so all eyes going to be on that, but for a very motivated, I'd imagine, Clemson squad, who just suffered the embarrassment of losing on the CW this last weekend, one of many ACC favorites to do so. That's a dangerous football team, and this is a massive test of this Notre Dame team's maturity. We've talked about that at multiple junctures of this season. Can you, as a veteran team that is playing your best football right now in so many ways, go out here and dial it in? Though the record says 4-4, looking on the tape, I'm sure you see a very different story told by all of the different future pro prospects, especially on that Clemson defense.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield. Well, fellas, after this week, we will officially be halfway through the 18-week NFL season. Can you believe it? It hurts me just to say that. And while we might feel like we have a grasp on what's going on in the NFL, the past few seasons have shown that teams can make late pushes here, make a big change to the playoff picture as we come down the stretch. In 2021, the Eagles were 3-6 after week 9, went 6-2 down the stretch to make the playoffs. 49ers 3-5 after week 8, went 7-2 down the stretch to make the playoffs. Emerson Latzia, you can record this part. The Jags were 3-6 in 2022 after week 9, went 6-2 down the stretch to make the playoffs, including 5 straight to close out the season. So guys, this begs the question, who are the top candidates here who maybe don't have like the hottest record to make a run down the stretch in the NFL? Who would we choose here?
Oof, it's a real daunting task to try and sift through all this, because I think when you look at the anatomy of a bunch of those outfits, a lot of it can boiled down to quarterback play, especially for the Jags last year coming off that bye week. You saw some of the best of Trevor Lawrence down the stretch of that season. Dad, teams that would qualify here in this range, you look at the Los Angeles Chargers, who are sitting at 3-4, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 3-4, the Texans, the Titans, the Rams at 3-5, the Colts at 3-5, and the Patriots sitting there at 2-6. Dad, I think I'm going to comfortably take off from this the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
I just think that we've already seen their best punch in a lot of ways, and that this was a roster at the beginning of the season that a lot of people looked at and thought would be a number one pick contention. They have overcome that, I think, in large part, no small part, due to the fact that they play in one of the worst divisions in football. I'm going to take the Texans and the Titans out of that also, just the rookie quarterback factor. It's not that I don't think these guys will stop being great. I think we've seen C.J. Stroud already prove that this is pretty sustainable. Will Levis gets to do it on a short week this week. And so I would really circle in on either the Rams or the Chargers, just because those are rosters that have enough talent and veteran quarterback play to actually get that done. Everyone else is either dealing with a rookie or a backup, or being the New England Patriots, who have the second worst point differential in football.
I agree with the teams you're taking out, and the teams that are staying in. I look at quarterback, I look at schedule, and I look at defense. So you have the Rams and the Chargers. I do as well. I'm going to throw in the Colts, just for the fact, Mike, they play New England, Tampa, Pitt, Las Vegas, Houston, Carolina, Tennessee, Cincinnati's a tough one, and Atlanta. It's not the most daunting schedule. Now, they're not one of the better teams, but it's not a team like they're playing Cincinnati and Baltimore and San Francisco and Philly. It's not a wow, they're going to get smoked record or schedule. So that's one of the reasons I kind of leave them in there, but I do lean to the Rams and to the Chargers. Now, for the Rams, man, you're in the same division with San Francisco and Seattle.
That's the toughest part for me is that makes it tough. In the NFC West the way that they've played so far.
So you wonder if you lean to the Chargers, who offensively looked good last week, albeit against the Bears, a game that I called, and they have the 31st ranked defense in the league. I mean, now they're decent against a run. The whole team's under 100 yards against a run, but their defense is not very good, and you have a defensive coach. The Rams' defense is 17th in the league. The Colts is 28th. The best defense of all these teams we've talked about is New England. New England is the only top 10 defense, and they're number 10 of all these teams we're talking about. Everybody else is 17th or lower, all the way down to 31, as I mentioned, with the Chargers. But New England, to me, just doesn't have the offense to be able to compete at all. So I go Rams, I go Chargers, and because of the schedule, way on the outside, can they make a run down the stretch, is the Colts because of the schedule.
No, it's a great point. Like the AFC South, kind of akin to what we talked about with the NFC South. Right, you're going to have an opportunity just because so many of those teams are in transition, the Titans breaking in a new rookie quarterback despite having Mike Vrabel as their head coach, and then the rest of what they've got going on there. So I think that's probably the way to organize it. Dad, the Rams have been the ones that have been most disappointing to me as of late, considering how they started to where they currently sit now. And part of that is the Seahawks have proven last year was not just a one-year wonder. That's a team that looks legit. You look early on here, back-to-back losses for the Rams. The Cowboys, I don't fault them as much for. That's a Cowboys team that should be accomplishing at this level. But losses against the Steelers are the kind of things that you can't avoid. And even you look back at the Bengals in week 3, that was not the same Cincinnati team that we're seeing right now. That was Joe Burrow just starting to feel a little bit better, just starting to get back into form a little bit. But, you look outside of that Steelers loss, forgivable losses for this team, and they've got enough offensive firepower. You've still got a game wrecker in Aaron Donald. You've got a few of the things that you can sprinkle in there and feel comfortable about, even if the last 2-game skid hasn't inspired a ton of confidence.
So I'm wondering, though, Mike, are the Rams what we thought they were? Because we didn't think about them much going into the season, right? Because Cooper Kupp was still injured. They had the 49ers, who we thought were going to run away with things, but they're not, and Seattle in there. And then they start out 3-1 with Puka and Tutu. I mean, and we're like, what the hell is going on? How are they doing this? So did we get kind of led down the path a little bit of, boy, maybe they're way better than we thought? But as of late, it's more like, okay, this is more of what we thought. So I wonder what team it is. They do have Cooper Kupp back, obviously. That helps on the offensive side. But so we've seen two different teams, and I wonder where they fall in the middle on that, in that parameter.
It probably is somewhere in the midst of that, right? Like that was a team that was trying to bounce back off one of the most injured offensive lines that I can remember in like recent history last season, where New York Giants fans are getting acquainted with this now based on how much rotating's gone on in that lineup with some of the injuries there. But it was just wholly unsustainable for them last year, and you had so much turnover. You saw the roster churn from the remnants of the championship team with all of that they mortgaged to get to that point. They had to pay at some point, and part of it was hard to predict that because these were young players stepping up in roles that we didn't see coming. Puka Nacua, who seems like a household name now, was not going into the season, and to do what he did without Cooper Kupp, and then when Cooper Kupp still came back, is remarkable and something that I would imagine nobody outside of his family would have predicted going into the season. So I think those things were difficult to kind of come by. And so it's why when you also weighed that against the division that they played in and what we've expected from the 49ers, what we've expected from the Seahawks, who, I don't know, Dad, maybe you can spin that as the reason they might have a little bit better a chance. One of the reasons I felt emboldened by this Los Angeles Rams team early on was because of how they played early in the season against the 49ers in a division game, where we had expected the 49ers to chew everyone up and spit them out. And walking into that one, maybe now we're seeing, hey, that's more this 49ers defense right now is falling short of the standard that we've seen from the last few years versus this Rams offense is necessarily getting back to the greatest show on turf.
And I was wrong. They were 2-2 in their first 4, not 3-1. They beat the Seahawks. They lost to the 49ers, lost to the Bengals, and then beat the Colts in overtime. The other team, the Chargers, again, the defense scares me, but the offense finally looked like the Charger offense in the game we were both at on Sunday night with Herbert.
With the caveat that it's against the Bears.
Exactly. But Austin Eckler being used, the way we all think he should be used. And also, listen, their remaining schedule, they got some tough ones. Listen, they have Detroit, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, but they have Denver twice, though we shouldn't, I don't know how much you poo-poo Denver. They just beat KC. The Giants, Green Bay, and New England. So the three real tough ones there are Detroit, Baltimore, and KC. And then certainly, Buffalo, you throw that in there as well. So
they get all those at home, though, which is huge.
Yes, they do, which is big for sure.
Although, I guess for the Chargers, getting a game at home
is
really kind of
depends on who you're playing, right?
I mean,
if it's a well-traveled team,
Detroit, that is going to be. We've seen the way Detroit has shown up on the road this season. They basically took over. What was it, Tampa Bay? Where you had all those Lions fans in the lower bowl after the game just getting buck. I very much fear with the Chargers game. I've now been to 3 Chargers games because of you and calling games for Sunday Night Football with Westwood One. And at each Chargers game, my metric for what kind of opposing team we're dealing with is, does it actually sound like a Chargers home game or not? And in most games, when it was the Dolphins that played there last year, it was overwhelmingly Miami crowd. When it was the Cowboys that played here this year, it was actually about a 50-50. I couldn't tell who the crowd was cheering for based on the reaction to certain events in the game. The Bears game was the first game that sounded like a Chargers home game for me. That one, based on where the Bears season's at, not totally unsurprising. But for Detroit, for Buffalo, and for Kansas City, I'd imagine if people were looking, especially, Dad, at these games as we're getting into colder weather right now, that's a nice vacation opportunity for a lot of these teams. A lot of chance to get out of the cold that you're in and get on out here for some of the Southern California weather. And man, oh man, is that not a great time. I can't imagine what that's like preparing for as a Chargers team where you might have to work on silent count for your home games
for your home game.
Opposing crowds do.
It's got to be amazing. But listen, we said that when the teams were going to LA, right? I said out of the gate.
It, but man, seeing it in practice like we have is jarring.
Like you said, using the silent count when you're at home is really a stunning thing.
It is. It's truly amazing. So the Chargers definitely are in that. But man, I at this point, kind of like we talked about with the Dallas Cowboys, Dad, after the Cowboys got blown out with the 49ers, a lot of people said, what would they have to do for me to trust them in a big time moment in the postseason again? For the Chargers, they're going to need to do a lot for me to trust them again outside of the preseason hype machine that builds every year, because every year going into the season, we look at the roster, we look at the talent there, we say the ultimate caveat, if they stay healthy, which is a rarity in Chargers country, then wow, what they could accomplish. And it seems like every year we are continually let down like we've been to start this season, to where we're talking about each and every week, is the head coach going to keep his job? Like this race between him and McDaniels and Matt Eberflus for the coaches that might unfortunately lose their job first in the course of the season. It turned to that version of the conversation far too quickly. And so it's going to take a lot for me to trust this Chargers team again. And I'm inclined and wired to want to, based on the kind of names and tantalizing talent they have.
Yeah. And what a matchup Monday night, that Charger offense, which we saw with the caveat, it was the Bears. Now it's a Jets defense, which is a really, really good defense. So this is a bigger test for that Charger offense, and certainly for the Charger defense against the Jet offense. Now, it's not like the Jets offense is this unbelievably explosive offense by any stretch, but this Charger defense has to start playing so much better. When I say that, that just means by the guys that are on the field, because you ain't changing anything. Trading deadline is over as far as bringing anybody in. You got the players you got. So they just have to start executing better and winning their one-on-one battles.
By the way, if you're a Washington Commanders fan who's wondering why your name wasn't added to this list of teams under 500 who might have a shot down the stretch here, you just sold your entire... I mean, I don't have to explain to Washington fans, but having just sold off half of your defensive line and those former first-rounders that you had all picked up there, and, oh, by the way, playing the Cowboys twice, San Francisco and Miami in this back half, I'm going to comfortably put them on ice.
Yeah,
like, I know you're not supposed to do that. I know
no.
they could, in theory, come back and bite me in the ass. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that the Washington Commanders' goals lie elsewhere in this season, and that schedule is probably going to be prohibitive of them being involved in any real meaningful conversation.
I agree. You talk about that on the defensive side, and on the offensive side, I believe 5 minutes ago, Sam Howell got sacked again. So, I mean,
Sam Howells and Shedeur Sanders need a support group. And I understand with Sam, a lot more of it is his doing because of the style of play that he has. But regardless, both of those dudes are getting hit a lot, and it has to suck.
Yeah, and for both of them, listen, we have to say it's on them as well for holding onto the ball at times. But clearly the O-lines are not what they need to be on those two teams.
Completely agree. Speaking of struggling teams, Jesse, we've got another team that's got an interesting outlook for the rest of the season here. We talked about one of their division mates, but the Green Bay Packers, also a group that quietly is getting very, very nervous about the long-term prognosis, coming off back-to-back future Hall of Fame quarterbacks that have led the franchise to Super Bowls. Now you're staring down the barrel of that grim reality of how the other half lives.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost halfway through Jordan Love's first season as starting quarterback here, and still no conclusive answer about whether he is going to be the team's long-term answer here.
We got 10 games left. These are going to be very important 10 games, and I think he's done a lot of really good things. Really like the way he's responded to the adversity, how he's led the team. Again, we got to be better as a unit, and I expect that to happen over the next 10 games. I think we're going through some things that we knew we would go through. We haven't had the results we want, but I do like the way the guys are responding to things. When the group as a whole is not functioning the way it should function, it's hard to evaluate anybody. So at the same time, it's on us to get that right, so we can move forward and evaluate the guys that we have in that room. It does when we're not clicking, it's tough to evaluate anything.
I mean, Packers 2-5 under Love's tutelage here, and not exactly a ringing endorsement.
No, Goody Man's got to be feeling the heat right now. They all do. You can see, Dad, in this stretch, why Matt LaFleur was so willing to go out and publicly have Aaron Rodgers back in the midst of a bunch of controversial comments he was making in public, because Matt LaFleur knows how much better he looks at his job when you have got that man playing quarterback versus Jordan Love playing quarterback. And that's not to slight Jordan Love and say that he's been terrible. He certainly hasn't been great, especially passing the ball downfield this season. He's completing under 60% of his passes, but everybody looks better when they're coaching a future Hall of Famer. And I'm sure Matt LaFleur, in the midst of all that, will they, won't they bring him back? Do they want Aaron Rodgers? Is like, I can tell you one person who does and who misses him dearly right now.
So is this the only shot Jordan Love gets? I mean, is it this year? Is this where we are? We know some teams move quickly. Does he sit for the 4 and get 1 year to decide? 3 or 4 he sat, and then now the 1 year to decide what's going on? Because we're talking about teams that are, another team, in Atlanta gave the reins to Desmond Ridder, and that's not happening. They bench him. It goes to Taylor Heineke, which leads you to believe that they don't have a quarterback of the future on their roster right now.
Which is a lot easier to do, by the way, with Desmond Ridder, who wasn't a former first-round
Exactly.
pick.
But we're talking about other teams that may go for a quarterback, Chicago, Arizona, and others out there as well. And there's only so many to go around. The top-ranked quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Shedeur Sanders, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. How many go in the first round? How many are up there as first-round talent where you're bringing them in and saying they're going to be the new face to this team? So that's what I wonder about Jordan Love. Does he get more than this year to say, okay, that was really, while you're a veteran player, that was your first year as a quarterback, and we're going to give you another year to try and grow into that?
Yeah, the more and more I go along to in this college football season, I'm really not sure if there are more than 2 first-round quarterbacks in this draft class.
But 4 will go in the first round.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think we'll do a lot of talking ourselves into the other 2 there. They could sneak in. They could be backing guys. And for the Green Bay Packers, it's going to be the exercise of where do you fall? I think like a lot of teams, so much of this is going to be just how bad you end up being and are you in range of one of those guys versus sitting in the middle, sitting towards the end of the first round here, that's going to decide that. Because I don't know either what the NFL free agent tracker looks like for players going into next year. So you'd have Kirk Cousins, who's going to be technically a free agent, but coming off the injury now. Ryan Tannehill on that same boat. You look on down the list, Dad, it's mostly guys in that backup quarterback class that are going to be named in the free agents for next year. And so there is kind of this gap where, okay, you've got Jordan Love for next year. I believe he signed that 1 year extension with the Packers that goes into next season. So they could technically have him under contract for that next year. And it just might be the devil at this point.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think I agree. I think, and we'll see where they finish up the year, and who's in the spot to be able to grab a quarterback early. Because as you said, and we know, we've seen, you'll get talked into a couple of more quarterbacks going in the first round. That's why normally it's a 50-50 shot on whether the quarterback's successful or not in the first round. Then you really set yourself back. But I would have a feeling he would get another year. He gets 1 year in the system, and to get another year to kind of see what he does. And next year would be more his year. Is he going to stay and be the future quarterback of the Packers, or will they make a move then?
We know they've had all the churn in the offensive line in front of them. We know that Christian, his wide receiver, whose last name just immediately left my brain.
Watson,
came back late from injury. There were a bunch of understandable reasons why this offense didn't take off early, because you're trying to hit a moving target with all that change. But the bottom line is kind of like you talked about in Atlanta. All that move, benching him for Taylor Heineke, indicates is they're considering all their options going forward. And I think for Green Bay, with what we've seen from Jordan Love so far, while it might not be definitive, they are in the we're considering all of our options phases of team building right now for that group. Coming up next, though, one of the options that we've talked about for young players got exercised by Tennessee last week, but what does Will Levis do for part 2? We get to that next here on GoJo and Golic. So before we get to a little Thursday night football look ahead in the NFL, Dad, we got some Thursday snitching about to go on in the Big Ten. Pete Thamel over at ESPN reporting that sources said on a Big Ten coaches call today, a vast majority of the league's coaches encouraged new commissioner Tony Petitti to punish Michigan amidst its NCAA sign-stealing investigation. The quote from a source said, collectively, the coaches want the Big Ten to act. Dad, we've seen a number of instances over the years, a lot of times in the professional level where an incoming commissioner or someone in a position of power walks immediately into controversy and is forced to act. This for Tony Petitti, you want to talk about potentially career defining on the way into your conference. You have got the team right now that is your second highest ranked squad in the conference, but I think in most people's minds, the one that they think has the best chance of winning a national title for the Big Ten this season based on what we know about Michigan, potentially with a chance to add to the hardware container for your conference at a time where that seems to be one of the biggest competitive things between you and the SEC. While you've got the rest of the conference staring you in the face as you've just taken over this job going, what are you going to do about this team that we all believe is dogging us out using this weirdo to steal signs from us?
Oh, yeah. They know that if left to the NCAA, I'm not kidding when I say you'll get a decision in 2026, maybe 25 at the earliest, but probably 26. And I guess my question still comes down, Mike, to what can they do? Now, the Big Ten technically has authority under its sportsmanship policy to punish Michigan or members of the coaching staff. Again, we don't know what that punishment is. What I've read is fines and or suspensions. I'm sure Big Ten coaches would like to see them, out of any postseason play, be it Big Ten championship or college playoffs. A, I don't know if that's within the Big Ten's purview to be able to punish that way. And B, they're not going to come down with anything while the NCAA is investigating it. They're not going to say, we know you're investigating it. We have enough evidence on our side to say, you know what, we're going to punish you right now. And when I say punish in a way that has an effect, because that's what the Big Ten coaches are looking for. They're looking for a punishment of deterrent. It's just like when you punish a child. You want to make that punishment so the child doesn't do it again, right? You don't want to just make it some soft thing where, oh, okay, that's a slap on the wrist. Boy, I guess I want to. So what can the Big Ten do?
It's not even punished so they won't do it again, although I'm sure that's part of it. It sounds like these coaches, because the words used on the call were tainted, fraudulent, unprecedented. They don't want them to be able to win the title this year.
That's exactly right.
I'm sure they all see the real possibility that this could happen, and all of the rest of them. They said this call was about 90 minutes, and about an hour of that was without Jim Harbaugh on the phone. Like, Jim was there, and then he hung up so everyone could speak freely, and then it was an hour of these people talking smack about the way that this has gone, apparently explaining to Tony Petitti how this sign stealing worked, how it affected their team. It was a lot of people apparently getting something off their chest because, Dad, you're right. They want the Big Ten to act before the NCAA because they all know how slow this works. And I think that's what it comes down to is they're looking at Tony Petitti asking, hey, we understand that in the big picture, in the sands of time, this could be good for the Big Ten if Michigan goes on and wins. But for all of us here and now, we can't stand watching them to win the way that we believe they've won.
So let me ask you this. A fine does nothing, okay? So if it in fact is either a fine or a suspension of coaches, let's just leave it at that, because I haven't read any more that they can say you can't be in the Big Ten championship or the play, and subsequently the playoffs. So let me ask you this way. We saw Jim Harbaugh was suspended for the first 3 games against teams they blew out, and it was kind of laughable as players were saying free Harbaugh and all that ha-ha-ha stuff. What if, let's just hypothetically say, that the Big Ten stepped in right now and said, Jim Harbaugh, you are suspended for the rest of the season. What effect do you think that would have on this team as, they have to play Penn State, they have to play Ohio State, they have to play a Big Ten championship, and then possibly into the playoffs as well, if they didn't have Harbaugh at the helm?
To say it would have no effect would, I think, diminish Jim Harbaugh's role too much. He deserves a lot of credit. We'd probably see another line of players holding up 4s or whatever they did to honor Jim Harbaugh as if he were lost. But I still think that's a really good football team that's going to have a hard time losing in most of these games.
I agree.
Especially the Penn State game. Ohio State might be a little bit more of a coin flip. It would have an effect, but I think like if you polled these Big Ten coaches, I'd imagine the answer they want is we want a postseason ban for them. We don't want them to be able to compete in the college football playoff of the Big Ten championship based on what we've seen. It would be unprecedented. So again, we're fighting against everything we've seen in the history of the sport in terms of punishment, but that's where we currently sit right now. So the coaches got to vent. It's all out there. And now Tony Petitti becomes one of the most important men in sports. He was already, but now he's got one of the most important decisions that could define his tenure as the Big Ten commissioner. And if it doesn't, Dad, then I'm sure it's going to be a very uncomfortable relationship between him and the rest of the Big Ten coaches and Big Ten schools, who are all going to look at how he handles this and hold him accountable for it, no matter what the outcome is. So we'll have plenty more information on that because every day that story changes and is insufferable. But Jesse, we've got Thursday night football tonight here. Let's lay this out here as we've got Titans and Steelers in a game that's become infinitely more interesting since last Sunday.
Yeah, narrative boost, right? With Will Levis here looking to improve to 2-0 in his career after that 4-touchdown debut, but it's going to be a big test for him against a stout Steelers defense. 22 sacks on the season, 15 takeaways. Now on the other side, Kenny Pickett going to be a game time decision with Pittsburgh, although Pickett says, I'm playing for sure. So we caught up with Ryan Fitzpatrick on this one and what to expect specifically for Will Levis.
As you get tighter in the red zone there, where a quarterback's got to make good decisions, he's going to have some pressure on him. You're going to have to get through your first and second read. So as you get into those things, when it just gets that much more difficult, defenses get more difficult. There's more pressure on you. There's more pressure on you to make decisions faster. You're throwing the ball before somebody comes out of his break. Those are the things, like, as you progress as an NFL quarterback, you just get better and better at. But things he didn't have to do a ton of in that first game.
I mean, all eyes are going to be on Will Levis. This is just like honing in, baby.
Yeah, this is prime for the overreaction bowl in this game, right, Dad? If this Pittsburgh defense that comes out, and while they haven't statistically performed up to par, still has a bunch of dudes on it that can wreck a game, still has one of the best head coaches in the NFL right now, you could absolutely see them crafting a game plan that all of a sudden gets a rookie in some more difficult situations. He throws a couple interceptions, and all of a sudden we've completely swung the balance of how people talk about Will Levis in public, when in actuality it was always probably somewhere in the middle with him.
But the one reason I may lean toward Tennessee in this one, Mike, is this Pittsburgh defense. You mentioned statistically they're near the bottom, but they are 11th in the NFL with 22 sacks and second in the NFL with 15 takeaways. But who else does Tennessee have on that offense? A really good guy in the backfield, right? And Pittsburgh is 27th against the run. That could be Will Levis's best friend. It normally is for a quarterback, but for a young quarterback, if they can get a running game going on a defense that has given up yards on the ground with King Henry, that could really, really help Will Levis.
Big boost for Pittsburgh in that regard. Cam Hayward, their veteran defensive tackle, activated off the injured reserve this week, expected to be available for this game. And he's one of the most important players on that roster, especially when it comes to being stout against the run. And that is going to be the battle. Because, Dad, you go back and you watch Tennessee's win, and so much of what they did is because Derrick Henry was so successful because they could just hand it off to him on first and second down. They could be masters of the obvious. But Will Levis did hit shots. And I think we talked about that with Fitz. It was one of the most encouraging things is while they gave him the opportunities to cut it loose off down the field, he was also fearless with that, right? You saw him celebrating from his back after letting it fly down there and giving his guys a chance. Seeing DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best contested catchers during his time in the NFL, and say, all right, bleep it. He's down there somewhere. I'm going to get it in range, and he's going to fill out the error for me.
The best friend, again, for Will Levis is watch the down and distance. There are plays broken down to down and distance. If Will Levis has third down and 4 or less or 3 and less, that's advantage Tennessee because that still opens the playbook up for him an awful lot. So that's what I look for in a game with a young quarterback. How comfortable are you making third down for them?
It'll be fun to see if they get into some spots where he's got to do a little bit more straight drop back, what it looks like for Will Levis. Going back to his best days at Kentucky, they were a heavy play action scheme under Liam Cohen, who's a Shanahan McVay tree kind of guy. So plenty to watch in a game we didn't think we were actually going to enjoy on Thursday Night Football. Coming up next, let's recap a Creed-fueled World Series win.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Last night, the Texas Rangers made history. They won their first World Series title over the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 5. Golics are standing by right now with Texas Rangers color analyst CJ Nitkowski to talk about this incredible moment in history and in time.
Yeah, CJ, we appreciate you joining us here. The first World Series in franchise history. Congratulations. What was that like as the final out was had there, and you saw this moment the franchise had been waiting on for so long?
Yeah, it almost seemed unbelievable, quite honestly, just because of the way that this season had gone. This was a really good team for a long time, and then they struggled. They were in first place for 160 days this year. For a 162-game season, it's about 187, 188 total days. And to lose the division on the very last day of the season, it felt like the season was over, quite honestly. It felt like they blew it. Yes, they were going to the postseason, but there wasn't that, hey, we did this, what a great regular season. And for them to go on the run that they went on, was incredible. And as far as the franchise goes, there's a lot of pain here from 2010, 2011, when the Rangers went to back-to-back World Series, didn't win either one of those, one strike away, a misplay, or a lot of different ways to break down what happened in right field for the Texas Rangers against the Cardinals. But they were that close. And they've been also living with the pain of having to watch their in-state rivals go on an unbelievable run with the Houston Astros. And to eliminate them in the American League Championship Series, quite honestly, felt like the World Series. But then to finish the deal here against the Arizona Diamondbacks for this franchise, it's just an incredible moment for this fan base.
So many great stats to go along with this. The Rangers now the first pro team in the four majors to win 11 games on the road in the playoffs, which is in the postseason, which is just incredible. But take it through the game. You finish 6 innings, and here's Zach Gallen for Arizona. Not only is there no score, but he's throwing no-hit ball. So where were you and your thoughts at that point of the game?
It's so interesting because if you think about some of the more dominant starting pitchers in the game over the years, there's that part of you that's going, man, is he going to finish this thing? Is he going to be so dominant and shut out this really good Texas Rangers offense? The difference when you're watching the Diamondbacks, and this is not a knock on Zach Gallen, is that we know that they don't want to go too deep with their pitchers. They have a plan in place. The game has changed pretty dramatically, and more often than not, you're not going to take any chances. I mean, I don't doubt that Torey Lovullo was thinking about pulling Zach Gallen out last night with a no-hitter, knowing he would have faced an unbelievable amount of criticism for doing it, but also for sticking to the plan. They have X amount of batters that they like their pitchers to be able to face, depending on who it is, and they had certainly reached that point and then some. And the question becomes, how many times can you really go through a Texas Rangers order, even without Adolis Garcia, and continue to throw well? It was a 0-0 game. The other part, if you watch enough baseball over the years, when you see the Arizona Diamondbacks have all those opportunities with runners in scoring position and they don't get a run across while your pitcher is throwing a no-hitter, there's no data, there's no science behind this, but it feels like, they're not going to win this game. They had so many opportunities early. Their guy's throwing a no-no. They can't break through. Something is about to go the Rangers' way, and then eventually it did.
we'll get to, Corey Seager, who ultimately is named the MVP of this round and becomes just the fourth player in Major League history with multiple World Series MVPs to his name. But you said the name I wanted to get to, Adolis Garcia, what we'd seen him mean both on the field and just as a spark for this locker room over the course of this postseason run. How impressive was it what they were able to do in these last couple of games after you get the announcement that he is going to miss the rest of this World Series?
It certainly was discouraging, but I will tell you this, watching this team, that was my 7th year doing Texas Rangers games, but this year in particular, watching this club, one of the big keys to their success was this kind of next man up mentality, of course, which we have all heard of playing professional sports, or any sports for that matter. It doesn't have to be professional, right? Somebody goes down, somebody else has to step up. It had been going on all year long, and it had been different guys at different times. Corey Seager went on the IL twice this year. At one point, Ezekiel Duran was a guy who stepped in and was hugely important. A lot of people I know, these are names that most people don't know. He should have been an all-star this year, and he wasn't. And then he had a really bad second half, and he wasn't even on the postseason roster. He got added after the injury to Adolis Garcia. But it's guys like him who have been doing it all year long. It was Mitch Garver stepping in when Jonah Heim went down. He went on the IL. Of course, the catcher for the Texas Rangers, Travis Jankowski, stepping in and doing a great job in left field, then getting the opportunity with Garcia going down. So it doesn't surprise me that the Rangers were still able to put together some really good offensive games. Now, over the long term, is that going to work out not having Adolis Garcia in your lineup? Probably not, but in the short term, it worked out really well. Guys stepped in. Jankowski had a really good game, his first start that he had after we found out that Garcia was no longer going to be available. I love that the rest of the kind of maybe casual baseball world got introduced to Adolis Garcia, because we've watched him here now for a couple of years. He's a fascinating guy, big, strong dude, kind of a gentle giant. I know we saw some aggression from him in the American League Championship Series against the Houston Astros. That's not his personality. He gets pitched in all the time, and he does a pretty good job of just go ahead and jog down to first base. But it's different, obviously, in the postseason, and he's been a clutch guy since he's been a Texas Ranger, and so now we got to do it on the biggest stage. Nobody is surprised that has watched this team to see him show up the way that he did, and then once he got hurt, to see the way that he showed up as a teammate for this club.
Yeah, you're right. To the casual fan, it was kind of an is this guy not in the lineup? Where Scherzer was kind of a wild card anyway. He, coming off of injury, coming back, how much was he going to be able to contribute, and got hurt as well. So Bruce Bochy gets his 4th World Series. There are now 5 teams: Colorado, Milwaukee, San Diego, who is at Seattle and Tampa, that have not won a World Series. And this is how it works, as you know, CJ. You get a day to enjoy it, and then you're asked about next year. Atlanta's already put in as a favorite next year until Shohei Ohtani ends up with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers will be the top pick. Where do you see this team, of the pieces they have together, of what they're going to hang on to, about continuing this?
What's kind of amazing is that for the most part, this entire team could be back, right? You have a couple of free agents. I shouldn't say the entire team. Mitch Garver being one of them. Andrew Heaney has an opt-out. But when you look at the main pieces, the lineup, there is nobody outside of Mitch Garver, of course, as the DH, that is not returning. And so you have that entire starting 9, starting 8 defensively in the field, and then most of your pitchers coming back. Now, there's some injuries there, of course, with guys like Jacob deGrom knowing he won't be back probably until at least August. But for the most part, this team is still intact. It's interesting, though, because I wondered about this part, right? Had they lost the World Series, would it change the way they go about their offseason? Would they continue to be aggressive? And they've been very aggressive over the last couple of seasons. Or because you won one, do you just go ahead and keep the group together, maybe try to add a small piece or two, knowing that you have a team that has already been there and done that? My guess is that's probably the route that they go, and the tweaks that'll be made. They'll look at the DH spot if Mitch Garver does not return, and then a couple of pieces in the bullpen. The way that this bullpen kept this thing together was a minor miracle, quite honestly. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew the bullpen was a problem. And I was talking about kind of that next man up mentality. It was going on the entire season long. Josh Forrest was a huge piece early. Then he struggled mightily and was dealing with injury. Jose Leclerc had been around for a while, but he wasn't a trusted arm. Those two guys in particular got it going late in the season, just in time. Of course, they added Aroldis Chapman. He was really good when he first got to the Rangers, got a little kind of iffy there for a while, and you can see how Bruce Bochy was using him, really wouldn't let him face more than 3 hitters and get into too much trouble, despite the fact that he's still touching 102 and 103 miles per hour at times. That, to me, is probably the miracle of this entire thing, that somehow, some way, Bruce Bochy using that Bochy magic on the bullpen and keeping this thing together in a couple of arms, again, that probably most people had never heard of, were key. They don't win a World Series without Josh Forrest and Jose Leclerc.
And they managed to do it, though. Like you said, that bullpen did hold on. They did get what they needed. And now the Texas Rangers get to call themselves World Series champions for the first time in franchise history. Had to be an incredible run to see up close and personal the way you did. CJ, we appreciate you giving us some time and the insight on this. Thanks so much.
Of course, my pleasure, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, CJ. Appreciate it. And Mike, baseball we know is stats, right? So just a couple here. I mentioned Bruce Bochy wins his 4th World Series. Listen to the company he's in. Casey Stengel and Joe McCarthy have 7. Connie Mack has 5. Now Walter Alston, Joe Torre, and Bruce Bochy have 4. I mean, that is some incredible company he's with. And just for those who like the history buffs for a team, the Texas Ranger history, remember in 61, they started out as the Washington Senators. In 72, they ended up in Texas. 5 stadiums, almost 24 managers, and 10,033 games later, they are finally World Series champs. So congrats to them on one hell of a long run there.
The answer to the age-old question, can you take me higher, was answered in resounding fashion by the Texas Rangers. Congratulations to them. Spitting in the face of people who want to play armchair television executive and tell you how bad the ratings were for this World Series. They don't care. Nope. Good luck. Coming up next, as we finish off the show, Dad, if you think I'm disrespectful to you at times as a son talking to their dad, wait till you see what one coach's son had to say to his dad next. All right, time to wrap this thing up the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you off on into your day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Do it. I'm serious. This isn't a joke. I don't say this for my health.
We're not playing.
No, we're not playing about this. Never, ever. Gate ain't never played about. No. If you missed any of our great guests, CJ Nitkowski, who joined us here, the color analyst for the Texas Rangers as they lifted the World Series trophy, or PJ Carlesimo, great coach, got to talk to him about some of the NBA action coming up here. Make sure you go out and check that out wherever you get your podcast, or right here on YouTube. As soon as we get done, the whole show is up and ready for you. Guys, let's get to this. Be your own people sometimes. Your own critics sometimes are right inside your house. Shane Beamer and South Carolina have had a rough season. They were well thought of going into the year in the SEC East. And as they sit here right now with only 2 wins on the season, Shane Beamer, still a guy that wants to think about being a family man, being there and showing up for his folks, shared an interesting anecdote about some words from his son around this recent Halloween holiday. Take a listen.
I can take criticism because I get it from my own family. I leave in the mornings before my wife and kids even wake up. So I FaceTime them every morning at 7:30 on their way into school. And today they were telling me that Hunter, my son, has a Halloween parade at his school where all the kids at his school, they dress up in their Halloween costumes and they walk around the track for however many minutes. And the parents come and they video and all that. And I was there for it last year. Because it was on a Monday, and my wife was telling me that he had that today, and I said, well, why didn't you guys tell me anything about it? And Emily said, well, I knew you had practice and meetings, so I didn't think you were going to be able to come. And then Hunter, my son, said, and it's also because you're 2 and 6 and you need to be in the office working. So I can take criticism. So please don't think that, because I get it at home worse than I get it on social media.
Wow. Makes me wonder what Dabo's kids are saying to him right now. Wow.
I mean, kids really will just say anything that pops into their brain, and it's part of what makes them so hysterical. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it really do be your own people.
Yeah, it really does. Though Mike, Jake, and Sydney had to be careful what they said to me growing up, because I had a 4-hour outlet every day where I could just hang them all out to dry, and I did at times.
Yeah, it sounds like you were big punishment guys, so I'd be scared too.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, the 4-hour outlet really just meant that we actually could say whatever we want, because you were going to make it up anyway. Even if it was like somewhat close, you were going to horseshoes and hand grenade this thing into something for the air. And that was always going to end poorly for us. So we might as well just pop off at home when we got the chance. I never got a chance to dunk on you quite that hard. That was savage. That
was tough. 12 years old, right? The kid's 12,
I feel like
believe.
You got to have a and you know what? Tone matters a lot in how that was delivered. Like if it was like a ha-ha thing where you're trying to break the ice and make it seem a little bit less severe. But if it was delivered like a message board poster, that feels like something Hunter's learning from his friends at school, and maybe you got to think about pulling him out and putting him in private school.
Yeah, or you got to at least discipline him somehow, some way, right? Like for starters, all the Halloween candy would have been gone. Done. Gone. Done. Got it all.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
By the way, a quick aside, Mike, your mother was telling me on TV, and I forgot who said it, or I don't want to say who said it. Either way, we're talking about, and now I'm going to get the name wrong, and she's going to mock me. It was something like a Halloween switch or something, where you take your kid's candy and you say, give us all your candy, and we'll replace it with a present. Like a gift.
My mom did that with me.
What the hell is that?
I got a cat. A living, breathing animal.
Come on. I mean, I'm just so tired. You know, I talk about houses doing it when you go to different houses, but in your own house where they're pulling the old not too much sweets, give us your candy and we'll give you a present. Just stop it.
No, but
Let
it's
the
a
kids
choice.
Eat the candy.
It was a choice. It was a choice. I was given
all right,
the
in
choice.
your house, it was a choice. Some houses, it's not a choice.
Okay.
They say, give up the candy and we'll give you a present.
Yeah, I don't
come on.
Give them the choice. Let them choose their own fate.
Did you love the cat? Was it a good cat?
Yes! My cat was amazing. We got my cat Trouble. We have my dog Runner. They grew up together. The cat would play fetch. He was like a dog. He was my best friend. I loved him.
But you know what I'll say? We have had dogs growing up. We have had a cat growing up. We continue to have dogs. And you know what our kids never had to give up? Their Halloween friggin' candy. Well, they got to have their candy and eat it too and have pets.
They got to have their candy and their cats.
And their cat, exactly.
As the saying does go here. Wow, what a journey that was. Speaking of cats, let's get to that. Jesse, the age-old question of airline decorum came into play again as a video emerged from over the weekend.
Look at this little scuffle in the not-so-friendly skies.
The whole trip, she pushed my seat. You seen it. No, she didn't. She put, no. I'm allowed to put my seat back. I'm allowed to put my seat back. I'm allowed to put my seat back. The whole trip, she pushed my seat.
Yeah, you're allowed to put your seat back.
You
but
are.
You shouldn't do it.
Oh, really? That's your stance on this?
Mike has always had this stance.
Very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you've got to fly with other people in mind. Flying is a team sport. We all have to have some awareness of the people around us. And if you're in an area where the seats have a lot of space around them, if you've got a very small person behind you, if they're also reclining their seat, you can take certain situations into account. But in general, like if you look back and see me, 6'4", crammed in there already, and you recline your seat, that's cool. You've made your decision. But like this lady found out, best believe you're going to wonder if that button works, because my knees are going to be jammed so hard in the back of your seat, because if that's your space, that's also my space. So if you want to walk into my dojo and you're not strong enough to get past me, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem.
I am not, Jesse, I am not as hardcore as Mike on that. I think it is your chair. If you'd like to, put it back some, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I do that though as well. I do look and see who's behind me, and rarely do I put my seat all the way back. I'll go partially back, unless it's like a kid who has all kind of leg room, then I'll go back. But while it can be uncomfortable if somebody puts their seat all the way back, I am of the ilk. It is your seat. And if you want to put it all the way back, then so be it. My choice then is to put my seat back some to give me a little more room, but it is their seat. So I don't have as much of a problem as Mike does.
Because perhaps I'm a rule follower, and you are not breaking any rules by reclining your seat. And I will say, I'm not a seat recliner. Like, I don't get into my seat and recline my seat. But if the person in front of me reclines, it's kind of like the domino effect. I'm probably going to recline at least a little bit, unless I also try and see who's behind me. But like my husband's, he's 6'2", he's a bigger guy. He reclines his seat, and he's like, sorry, you want more legroom, you should have paid for it. This is your seat. You paid for it. And the fact of the matter is, we are all getting mad at the wrong people. There's infighting going on, and the real villain is the airlines, who are making the planes smaller and cramming us in there like sardines.
I do agree with that, which is why, again, we're not going to change what they do, at least anytime soon. And so all we can do is stick together. And when you recline your seat recklessly, you subvert that entire model of us all taking care of each other. And that woman complaining about someone jostling her seat, you know why your seat would get touched a lot less? If you didn't recline it, because then I wouldn't be forced to interact with it in my space here. Again, I am going to go ahead and blame the recliner every time.
Hardcore,
I can't. It's selfish. Yeah. It's selfish behavior. And there are a lot of selfish people in the airport already. We don't need to add another one in there. I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for that.
I mean, I get it. People have their things. They're non-negotiables with airplanes. Mine is like, if someone takes their shoes off, you go to jail. You should go to jail.
I mean, if you leave the socks on and you keep it under the seat, I don't think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah. Oh, wow. We need to do a whole segment on flying etiquette.
Yeah,
Let's get to the third. We will put a pin in that and come back to it. But want to celebrate a timeless classic from Jesse and I's childhood. 50 Cent in the Club reached diamond status this last week. 10 million singles sold for 50 Cent. Jesse, I have such a vivid memory of going to buy Get Rich or Die Trying with my Aunt Tracy at Strawberries, the CD store in Avon, Connecticut when I was a kid. Do you have any close ties to 50 Cent and what In the Club gave us?
I mean, I just remember, I think I was in middle school, just thinking that this was the pinnacle of musical. Like, I was like, who will never get tired of this song? And I still am not tired of it. That's why it's gone diamond. Like, I listen to this song all the time.
43rd hip-hop song to go diamond and 121st song of all time to do it out of all the songs out there. That's such a small amount that has hit this amount. So congratulations to 50 Cent.
It still gets me going.
It's a birthday anthem, too. Once you had that We Don't Give a Bleep, It's Not Your Birthday, it officially became the song that everyone would, in fact, play for their birthday. So congratulations to former Farmington, Connecticut resident 50 Cent on this historic accomplishment. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.